The grand recital hall of the Manhattan Conservatory echoed with the hushed murmurs of elite musicians and critics. On stage, the air hung heavy with judgment, and at the center sat Elise Davenport, a 17-year-old girl from a struggling neighborhood in Detroit who wore thrift store shoes and borrowed clothes. Her fingers trembled as they hovered over the ivory keys of a Steinway grand. The lights were too bright, the room too cold, and the audience too distant. But the real weight pressing on her chest was the presence of famed concert pianist and professor Adrian Beaumont, known as much for his brilliance as for his cruelty. Adrian had built his career on perfection and ego. For him, talent came from pedigree, not poverty. When Elise had walked into his masterclass, recommended by a junior instructor who believed in raw talent, he scoffed. "Play something," he said coldly. When Elise finished the gentle Chopin nocturne, Adrian's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Cute. Now play this." He slid over a sheet. It was La Campanella by Liszt, one of the hardest piano pieces ever written. Elise's heart plummeted. It was a test meant to humiliate, not evaluate. Back in her shared apartment that night, Elise stared at the sheet music, hands shaking. Her mother, a waitress who worked double shifts, saw her daughter's struggle. "You've already survived harder things," she whispered, brushing back Elise's curls. Elise thought of growing up without a father, of missed meals, of playing on a broken keyboard salvaged from a church donation bin. Music wasn't just her dream, it was her escape, her heartbeat. For weeks, Elise practiced until her fingers blistered. She recorded herself, studied Liszt's phrasing, slowed down the mechanics, and played sections over and over until dawn. She skipped social events, survived on instant noodles, and practiced in the conservatory's lowest basement where no one went. She cried when she couldn't get the trills right, screamed into her pillow, but never stopped. She wasn't playing to impress Adrian. She was playing to reclaim her place in a world that had always shut her out. The day of the final performance arrived. Adrian sat in the front row, arms crossed, unimpressed. Other students whispered about Elise's attempt, most of them privately rooting for her failure. The auditorium filled quickly and tension pulsed like static in the air. Elise took the stage, gave a small polite nod to the judges, and sat down. Her hands hovered over the keys again, this time steady. The spotlight cut through the silence. Then she began. The first notes rang out crisp and bright, like bells in a winter night. Her fingers danced, note flew with a fluid grace no one expected. The notes spiraled, cascaded, leapt like fire through snow. Gasps echoed in the crowd. Adrian's face twitched, his eyebrows narrowing in disbelief. She wasn't just playing, she was storytelling. Each note a heartbeat, each run a breath. What should have sounded mechanical instead sounded alive. Halfway through, Elise made a daring adjustment, injecting subtle rubato and swelling emotion that added new soul to the piece. It was as if Liszt himself had written it for her fingers. People in the audience leaned forward. Adrian sat bolt upright, his lips parted slightly. His hand, which always held a red pen for critiques, slowly fell to his lap. He didn't write a word. By the final chords, the hall was so quiet you could hear her breath between phrases. She held the last note with trembling strength, and when she lifted her hands, there was a moment of stunned stillness. Then a roar of applause, standing ovation, tears, phones lifted. People clapped until their hands ached. Elise stood, gave a quiet bow, and left the stage with dignity. She didn't smile, she just breathed. For the first time in her life, it felt safe to. Backstage, she collapsed into her mother's arms, tears falling freely. Adrian didn't follow immediately. He remained in his seat, stunned, face pale. For the first time in his decorated career, he had been silenced not by power, but by purity. Elise had played not to win, but to speak, and her truth had thundered louder than his ego ever could. Later that night, Adrian knocked on the backstage door. Elise opened it slowly. He stood without his usual arrogant posture. Ben paused. "I came to apologize." She blinked. "I thought I'd seen everything." But today I realized I've been blind to what true brilliance looks like. You didn't play La Campanella, you transformed it." Word of her performance spread fast. Videos went viral. Critics called it the rebirth of Liszt. Elise was invited to perform at Carnegie Hall. Scholarship offers poured in. Her broken home keyboard was replaced with a signed Steinway. And Adrian? He became her most vocal supporter, offering to mentor her, though now always asking, never demanding. But Elise never forgot the basement piano, the chipped keys, the lonely nights. She returned there often to teach kids from low-income neighborhoods, offering free lessons every Sunday. Greatness, she told them, isn't born in privilege, it's born in silence, pain, and the will to keep going. Years later, at a major music conference, Adrian introduced her as the finest pianist of her generation. Elise smiled softly. But when she took the mic, she looked into the crowd and said, "Every one of us has something to prove, not to the world, but to ourselves. If someone puts you in a box, smash the lid and play your own song." Elise eventually toured globally, but never lost the soul of the girl who played through pain. Her music was raw, emotional, unfiltered, touching audiences in places where technique never could. Audiences cried not because of how fast she played, but because they felt like they knew her, knew struggle, loss, and the fight for light. And Adrian, he never forced another student again. Elise had taught him a lesson no theory could explain. Greatness isn't what you demand from others, it's what you awaken in them. And Elise, she didn't just play the hardest piece. She became it, note by note, breath by breath.